Hello. Hey, clinicians. I really hope you can hear me because I'm using my mic today. And I did go live previously trying to test it out, but it was quite quiet. So I have upped the volume and hopefully that will all work. So if you are watching live, just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. um, yeah, just give me some feedback. Also, if it's like very quiet, let me know. I don't know what I'm gonna do about it, but you can still let me know. Maybe for next time. And just anyway, if you're joining live, just say hi. As you might notice, I'm not looking into places today. So I've decided to just do these live sessions on the Facebook group rather than on Facebook and Instagram at the same time. I just find like trying to look and interact with two different places at once was just distracting for me. So I'm gonna focus it all here on the Facebook group. And yeah, I think we're gonna have some fun with that. But also then there's no like backup if things don't go great. So please do give me feedback on whether the sound is working, video is good, all of that. And I'd love to know from you guys also just your experiences with things. Let's talk about these things, let's interact. The more you interact with this live as well, the more other clinicians in the group are likely to see it, and the more they'll likely be helped by this information as well. So we're all kind of helping each other, not only by our actual comments and engagement, so that we can see how other people are feeling in this space, and just knowing that we're not alone and that it's totally human and normal, and that we can be helped. And then also so yeah, not only from the comments themselves, but then also helping the post be seen, helping others by having the post be more seen by others in the group. Okay, awesome. Please let me know if the audio is working if you are joining live. We're just testing out a new sound system. So yeah, say hi and just let me know that you're joining live. Always nice to know who's watching. Okay, awesome. So I was also thinking, so we're at in the Facebook group, we're now at 90 people. And I was thinking we could do something fun for when we get to 100. So invite friends who are clinicians also to the group, and we can get the group to 100, and then maybe we can do like a little fun event or a little get together, some sort of gathering or something like that. Okay, awesome. Cool. I hope the mic is working because I'm not getting any feedback on it. Okay, cool. So I really love the topic that we're going to be talking about today. I think, yeah, it's really exciting and really profound when you really start to like take this into your life, into your career, into your health. And the idea that we're talking about today is how our beliefs build our world. And I use that phrasing from Gabor Mate. He says I'm paraphrasing, but essentially, our beliefs are not only self-fulfilling, they are world-building. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's where I sort of adapted the title from. But I wanted to start with an example that maybe is not so like emotionally fraught for us. And so I thought I'll use the example of a surfing lesson, something that I've been doing recently. So I'm a newbie at surfing, and I thought it would make a cool example. So think about me going and surfing for like the first time, right? Or one of the first times that I'm going surfing. And think about if I was in this mental state, the thoughts that I'm having are like, I'm gonna suck at this. People are gonna be judging me. Like I really hope that other people aren't like able to stand and able to do it, and I'm just like sucking. I'm gonna be so like ashamed and embarrassed if like I'm really bad at this. People are gonna be watching and like like all those kinds of thoughts, and just imagine the kind of like emotional state that those kinds of thoughts and beliefs produce in me, right? I'm more likely to become a bit more contracted. I'm more likely to feel anxious. I'm more likely to dread the upcoming thing that I'm about to do, I'm also more likely to go internal because I'm so uncomfortable that I'm not necessarily like focused on other people. I'm very much focused on my internal world and my own discomfort. And now think about, from that place, how likely am I to do the things that are actually going to get me good at surfing, right? Take as many waves as I can, whether I think I'm going to do it well or not do it well, right? Get feedback as much as I can from my coach or my instructor or the other people that I'm surfing with, right? How often am I going to try something, even though I know it might make me look ridiculous, I might completely fail at it. How likely am I to do those things from that place? Very unlikely, right? I'm more likely to be protecting myself from that. I'm more likely to only take a wave when I think like, okay, this one I think I can do really well, or like do better. I'm not going to completely embarrass myself, right? I'm only going to take those waves, so I'm already taking less waves. I'm unlikely to look to my instructor and to other people like, you know, for feedback or how did I do, looking and watching how they do it and like appreciating that rather than being like, oh my gosh, like they can do it and I'm like sucking at this, right? It's a very different feeling and it produces a very different response. It also, um, because of that like internal focus, I'm not connecting with other people as much. This an example from a recent lesson where the waves were like much bigger than I'm used to, and I was feeling very scared. I also hadn't surfed in a little while. I'd been away, and I'd come back to surfing, and I was feeling so anxious that like every time I would start to take a wave, I would like back out. I would like put the brakes on and not actually go for it. And I kept on like backing out. I didn't take, I think, a single wave on that day. I may have taken one, but not fully. So you can see already like where that state would get me. And then there was there were two other ladies in the surfing lesson, and one of the ladies said something along the lines of like, "Do you swim?" And she just meant like, you know, as a sport, do I like do swims in the ocean? She does a lot of ocean swimming, so that's where she was coming from with this. But I just heard like, do you even swim? Like, do you even know how to swim, woman? Like, that's how my brain interpreted what she was saying because of that defensive and anxious state that I already was in. So I didn't engage with her. I didn't go like, yes, I like swimming. I don't do ocean swims, but like I'd love to do that or whatever. I was just like, yes, I do swim. You know, like this very sort of defensive. So you can see how it has effect on how I'm feeling, how anxious and you know, tense I'm feeling. It has impact on how I'm actually able to do the thing that the activity that I'm busy with. It affects how I'm interacting with other people and how connected I am to other people, right? So this is how our beliefs, our thoughts, essentially recreate the very thing that we are scared of, right? I'm scared of sucking at surfing. And guess what I'm producing? Me sucking at surfing, right? I'm scared of being embarrassed. Guess what I'm creating? I'm creating embarrassment. I'm creating disconnection from other people, right? So we're creating the very thing that we are worried about creating through our emotions and our beliefs. Say hi if you're watching live, and please let me know if my audio is. Oh, hi Jane. Is my audio okay? Jane's like my official feedback on audio. Hey Tash. Let me know if you guys can hear me properly. So I was just talking about surfing and how, like, as a beginner surfer, if I'm so protective against like not being good at this, okay, awesome. I'm like anxious about it. I'm tense. I'm contracted. I'm not enjoying the experience. I'm not actually getting better at surfing, and I'm not able to connect with the people that I'm surfing with or my instructor because of this very like internal focus, right? So we are reinforcing and recreating the very thing that we are scared of doing, right? Like in this case, I'm so scared of being bad at surfing, I'm so scared of embarrassing myself, of not being as good as the other people in the group, etc., that I'm creating that very thing, and not enjoying the experience, right? So I was just using the example of surfing because we don't have as much like emotional attachment to that, but it's just to show you an example of how that happens. And you might say, like, Sarah, that was just truth. Like, you probably do suck at surfing by the sounds of it, right? And that's true. And you know, if you think about, like, okay, but obviously you going there for like the first or second time or whatever, like, of course you're probably going to suck at surfing. Like, that, you're just telling yourself the truth, right? But the difference is how I feel, right? So if I'm like, oh, I'm probably going to suck, and you know, I'm okay with that, and I'm still happy, and I'm still connecting, and I'm still relaxed, that's very different to me being scared and fearful and ashamed of the fact that I might suck at this, right? And also, I want to point out, like, it's not just about what is objectively true, right? It's also about whether it's useful and healthy, right? It matters whether we are stressed the whole time when we are doing things. It matters whether we are contracting and going into ourselves, versus connecting with other people, expanding. Those things matter just as much as it matters whether we can argue whether I did or didn't suck at this thing, right? And we can argue probably on both sides of it. Like, we could argue that, yes, I probably do suck, and I'm a beginner, and you know, and we could also argue that maybe I don't suck, because what does sucking mean when you're just starting something, right? Like, we can argue both sides of it. There isn't a very clear, like, objective truth. But even if that was the case, think about also what is useful and what is healthy, not only, but what is the truth, right? I sometimes think, like, you have to be a little bit delusional sometimes. Like, that is creativity, right? Creativity requires that we believe something in our imagination first. We believe something is possible first, and then we go and create that. If we aren't a little bit delusional, we're going to just keep creating the exact same situation, the exact same life that we already have. And there's a reason why we're wanting to change something. I'll talk a little bit more about being delusional later on. Okay, so looking at what is true versus what is useful and healthy. So what could be some other possible thoughts when I am, you know, about to go surfing, right? Maybe I'm like, this is so cool. Like, I'm excited to suck at this because it means that I'm doing something new. I'm not just doing the things that I'm already good at. Like, what kind of life is that, right? That's not exciting. It's a sign that I'm learning. It's a sign that I'm doing something new. Maybe I am excited to meet the other people who are doing this alongside me, right? Maybe I'm looking to make new friends. Maybe I think something along the lines of, well, how I experience this surfing lesson is just as important as whether I'm good at surfing, or more important than whether I'm good at surfing. Like, I don't really care if I'm good at surfing. I care if I enjoy this experience. Like, what's the point of me doing this if I hate it the whole time and I'm just anxious and stressed the whole time? Like, why? So those are some possible thoughts. And I like to sometimes have a little bit of like fun with it, like just almost like pointing out how silly your brain can be sometimes. Like, you know, maybe it's possible that my entire self-worth doesn't depend on whether I can stand up on a long piece of whatever surfing boards are made out of, right? So getting like a little bit sort of silly with it, you can feel how your whole body just kind of like lightens a little bit when you say things like that. So I sometimes like do that kind of thing. And then also like even more, if you want to go even further and have like some delusional fun with it, you can be like, actually, I don't suck at all. This is actually what amazing surfing looks like. Like, people are just confused. They think I suck, but actually I'm like amazing at this, right? I'm supposed to be taking like these baby waves. I'm supposed to be falling on my ass every 2 seconds, right? So having some fun with it and just see how that changes your whole like emotional state. Let me know if you've tried any of these Tash, maybe you can relate with your skiing experiences. Um, but yeah, these are some other thoughts, and you can see how differently I feel when I think those things. You can see how differently I'm going to act when I do those things, right? I'm going to be so much more willing to try things over and over. I'm going to be willing to fail. I'm going to be laughing about things with the other students, right? I'm going to be asking, like, how was that, with my instructor, because I'm not scared to hear the answer. So just seeing how I just want you to have this picture and this like understanding from this particular situation, how the way that we think, what we believe, influences how we feel, which influences our behavior, and that's going to reinforce whatever we think and believe. And then I want to use it in a situation that I find a lot of clinicians struggle with, and particularly because I'm a chiropractor, so a lot of the people in this group are also chiropractors, and one of the common things is other people don't respect my profession, right? So some version of that. People don't respect my profession. And I want to again go to, this might to you seem like objectively very true, right? You can be like, Sarah, yes, it is true. Like, people don't respect my profession. And again, we could argue for both sides of that. You can probably find examples of people who do respect your profession, right? But again, let's go to what's healthy and what's useful, right? If you are saying, I'm unhappy in my career, I'm stressed, I'm anxious, I'm not enjoying my work because other people don't respect my profession, right? You're putting all the control, all the power in their hands to decide whether or not you are actually enjoying your career. Like, that makes no sense, right? I understand why we do this. This was one of the things I struggled with the most. So please know that I'm not saying it's because you're like, oh, just don't care what other people think. I'm just pointing out like how this affects us, right? So you're putting all the control in their hands. And then think about the emotions and the actions again that come out of that. If you're going into, let's say you're going to a conference, right? And there's a whole lot of other healthcare professionals, and you are thinking, oh, these people are not going to respect what I do, right? You immediately go, I find there's like sort of two paths that people go down. Either, this is the path that I usually chose, either it's very kind of like you retract, you basically don't want to talk about what you do, so you don't like go up to people and want to talk about things and start conversations because you're like, oh my gosh, please let no one ask me what I do because I hate that conversation, right? Or people just are very defensive and they're like ready to attack, right? They're just like waiting for that one comment from someone and they're like, will launch into this whole thing. Meanwhile, the person was just like asking them a really simple question and had no like bias whatsoever. So think about again the emotional state that comes with people don't respect me or people don't respect my profession. We are going to have certain emotional reactions. We're going to have certain behaviors that are likely going to reinforce the exact same thing, right? If I'm unfriendly, if I'm defensive, if I'm not really engaging with people, they are not going to have some new belief about my profession, right? I've done nothing to change the way that they think about the profession. I've done nothing to give them an example of someone who isn't whatever their belief is about this profession. And if there is going to be any change, if there is going to be any respect for your profession, think about what actions that would come out of. And this is not to say that the burden of like making sure that your profession is respected is on you. I'm talking about the actual experience of this and how we are going to recreate and reinforce the exact same things that we're already believing, right? Someone might be not liking you because you are standoffish and defensive, not because of anything to do with your profession, but you would likely see that as, see, I told them what my profession is, and now look at how they're treating me, right? It's going to reinforce because that's the evidence that you're looking for. So again, like thinking about like what would change if you just decided that that's not what you're going to tell yourself anymore. That is not how you're going to walk into a situation. That is not how you're going to be thinking about this, right? What if you just assumed that you belong there as much as anybody else? How different would you behave? How different would you interact with people if you're like, I belong here? My profession is very respectable. I think that's a word. If you truly believe that and you're like, I'm so excited to tell people about what I do because I love what I do and I'm so excited about what I do. And if they are not excited about what I do, it's because they're confused. It's because they don't understand. It's because they don't have the perception of my profession that I do. So how can I show them that, right? Like, how different would you feel almost assuming that you belong, assuming that people will love you, assuming that people respect your profession, even if they don't, right? Again, even if it's not objectively true, even if someone genuinely doesn't respect your profession, think about how different you are going to feel. Think about how different you're going to show up when you are believing something completely different. And I use this with social interactions because I still struggle with it sometimes, but definitely not to the extent that I did. I used to be extremely anxious socially. And one of the things that I love to do is if I'm going into a social interaction with groups or with someone that I'm meeting that's new, anything that would normally kind of like make me feel quite anxious, I just have this thought of like, they love me. Everyone loves me. If someone doesn't like me, they're just really confused because I'm a delight, right? Like, I am such a cool person. I'm a delight. I'm wonderful, right? And if someone doesn't like me, then they're probably just very confused. And I feel sorry for them being so confused, right? There's this interesting, I can't remember the exact wording of it, but it was essentially, if you judge me, I feel sorry for you because you're missing out on me. And if I judge you, I feel sorry for me because I'm missing out on you, right? And it's that kind of idea, right? Like, it's only their loss. I'm a delight. I usually say I'm an effing delight, which just, I was like, just keep it. But yes, I do say I'm a fucking delight. And if people don't see that, then that's their choice. Tash was just thinking about how I related to the skiing, exactly. Thinking how I can relate it to work. Yes, and also like, so this thing about, socially being a delight, use this with your patients, right? Especially the ones who like, I used to use this with patients, like it's often like the grumpy old men, but like people who you have the sense that they don't really like you. They're just confused. They actually love me. They just don't know it yet because I'm a delight. So try that at work. Try it with your patients. I had this friend who she waitressed, and she used to say like she would just pretend that she's so dumb that she doesn't know when you're being mean to her. So someone would be like mean to her, they would be critical, or they'd complain, or they'd say something to her, and she would just pretend like she doesn't notice that they're being mean, and she was just keeping her bubbly, happy self. And she was like, I'm not gonna like have this stressful, horrible day at work just because you decided that you wanted to come and be mean to me. And she said like sometimes someone would be like so annoyed by that because they're trying to be mean to her and they're trying to upset her, but she's just like, acting like they didn't say anything bad. And she said sometimes like eventually they would like come around and just be like, okay, well, that's not working. So let me just be nice to her. So it's just this idea again, like it is so important how we feel, right? Like even if a patient doesn't like you, to not have that be something that is stressing you, that is making you anxious, that is making you have a terrible day, right? They are choosing to, be whoever they are, and it's usually to do with, whatever they have going on and not to do with you anyway. So how can you use this to feel differently and to behave differently, and actually to create the 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 opposite, right? So to have that self-reinforcing work for you, right? Someone might end up thinking that you're a delight just because you kept on showing up that way and you refused to, be any different. So how can you create the things that you're actually wanting to create, right? And if you don't change people's minds, at least you are having a good time, right? Okay, so I wanted to just talk about the delusional thing, or people either say it as like you being delusional, or like they'll say something negative and then they'll say I'm just being realistic. And I want to just point out that no one ever uses that in the opposite direction, right? So if you are, let's say you are going on a trip and you are thinking about everything that could go wrong, and you're like, I'm just being realistic, right? But no one thinks about everything that could be wonderful and everything that could be amazing and then go, I'm just being realistic, right? When in reality, being realistic is looking at both, right? And probably coming to somewhere in the middle. And you might even decide, I'm actually going to focus on the good stuff because I actually feel better that way. And I don't really mind if something not great happens, I will deal with it then. But just noticing that we call negativity realistic, but we don't call like positive or optimism or hope, we don't call that realistic. It's just like a nice to have, and usually delusional, right? We don't say if someone expects that everything is going to go wrong all the time, we don't call them delusional. We only call them delusional if they think everything is just going to work out all the time. Everything's going to be amazing, right? So just noticing that difference. And yeah, I think just in general, to me, it's more important that I have mental peace, that I am connecting with other people, that I'm able to be present with other people, than whether it's objectively true in that particular scenario, right? And then I wanted to just touch on like the science behind this, because I think you can get an intuitive sense of like how this works and why it works. But if we think of the study, it's basically psychoneuroimmunology or psychoneuroimmunoendocrinology, but it is essentially like what we talk about the biopsychosocial model, right? Like we just know everything is connected. We know that pain is biopsychosocial, right? It's the same thing with our emotions, right? How we're thinking is going to affect our emotional state. It's going to affect all our physiology, right? And vice versa. Our physiology affects the way that we think. We touched on that in the 5 Days to Feeling Better. But knowing that everything is interconnected, that it's not like our brain and our physiology, or our mind and our body are two like separate things, and that our behavior is totally different to what we're thinking, right? They're separate things. No, not at all. So just knowing that like interconnectedness of things, and just on that, the quote that I started with about how our beliefs are not only self-fulfilling, they are world building. They literally build our worlds. We build our worlds with how we believe, what we believe, and we've sort of touched on why that is, right? Because your beliefs will determine your actions, which will determine your behaviors, etc. And that was a quote by Gabor Mate. And he also says, like, we need to remember that before we had much control over it, the world created our minds. So in your childhood, in your adolescence, you would have had certain experiences that predisposed your brain to working in a particular way. Like even our stress axis is physiologically different depending on what stresses and trauma we experienced in our childhood. And I don't mean trauma like only the really terrible things. I mean like even things that, for example, if someone in their childhood or their adolescence had a very strong experience of being rejected by their peers, they will experience social interactions as much more threatening than other people who didn't experience that. So they will read a neutral expression as being negative, right? Like you will perceive someone who is being either like completely having a neutral expression or a positive expression, you will see it as, oh, they're rejecting me, oh, they don't like me, right? So the whole way that we perceive the world changes because of those physiological differences. So I just want to point that out, because I think a lot of the times we can not understand why we are so anxious, why we are so negative, and why we are sort of predisposed in that direction. And part of that can be just the experiences that you've had, especially in your early, like, formative years, that would have created a certain like hypervigilance for negativity. But also just as in general, humans are, we have, we spoke about that in the workshop as well, but we have a negativity bias. So we are more concerned with surviving than being happy, right? So we are going to put a lot more emphasis on just making sure that we are aware of threats and protecting ourselves from threats. So just generally being aware of that your brain is going to go towards negativity more likely, and we have to consciously redirect it in order to have less stress, in order to feel happier, in order to feel fulfilled, and in order to start looking for the positive. And that is the other part of it, is your reticular activating system, which, if you think about it, like, we have so much information coming in. We can't be aware of all of it all the time. So this is like a filtering system to tell us, okay, this is important, this is the information you need to know, to almost like, bring it only, make sure our mind is only conscious of the stuff that is really relevant. Otherwise, we would be like messes, honestly. So this is why, for example, if you're looking at buying a certain car, a certain model of car, that you will then start seeing that car everywhere. And it's often why we think, oh, it's a sign, right? I mean, if you believe in science, all that, awesome. But this is just a way that you can sort of understand from a scientific perspective why that actually happens. So when you start orientating more, when, like, for example, in that social interaction, if I just assume everybody loves me, guess what I'm going to be looking for evidence of how people positively respond to me, of how people like me, of how people gave me, compliments or whatever. Like, I'm going to be looking for the positive stuff, versus if I believe, oh my gosh, I'm going to be rejected, no one's going to like me, or, in that example, they're not going to respect my profession. Guess what evidence I'm going to be looking for, right? So this is, again, how it reinforces itself, because we look for evidence of what we already believe. And that's how we keep sort of either stuck in the same place, or just going sort of further and further into a negative space, or further and further into a positive, depending on how we choose to redirect that, right? Okay, so I hope that has given you like a little bit of a glimpse of how differently you can think, how differently you can feel, how differently you can behave without anything changing in the actual situation, right? We haven't talked about how to change things in your external environment. We've talked about how to change how you're thinking, how you're feeling, how you're behaving, and that changes how your world is built, right? So I hope I've given you at least a glimpse into that, and don't worry if it feels really hard to access that, especially if you have a long history of being more towards anxious and fearful and tense, and have some experiences in your life that have sort of directed you in that sense. It doesn't mean that that's just the way that you're going to be forever. You can still redirect, but it can feel a little bit more impossible for you, or it can feel a little bit less like you can access that possibility. And I just want you to know that it really is possible. Anyway, so I hope I've given you a glimpse of that. So creating the career that you love, and that doesn't mean that we don't make changes, right? But it's just to give you an idea of how much we can really change without changing anything external. And that is really like, it gives me a lot of hope, because there are a lot of things that we don't have control over, but we have control over how we think and what we believe. And that's why I love coaching so much, because that is the process of coaching, is like changing the way that we think about these things. So yes, I would love to work with you if this is something that you also are starting to get a glimpse of, like, okay, this is something that I need in my life. Reach out to me, DM me, and we can chat about that. What is today? Tuesday. Have a great Tuesday. Have a great rest of your week, and keep the discussion going in the comments. You can also let me know about areas where this might feel a little bit more difficult for you, and we can brainstorm some ideas of how you can take that next step towards what we've been talking about. Awesome. Have a good evening. Thanks for joining, Tash and Jane. Bye.